So the American midterm elections have been a massive success for the Republicans, a big blow for President Barack Obama. Although Bill Clinton, I suppose, had a similar experience in 1994 and didn't stop him being re-elected 2 years later. But who better to analyse things for us? And an old favourite guest of ours here on The Last Word, the Chief Executive of the Trends Research Institute, joining us from New York, Gerald Celente. Hello to you, Gerald.
Hello, Matt.
So what do you reckon the political and indeed the economic consequences of the midterm elections are going to be?
Nothing and nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one criminal group replaced the others. The Gambinos replaced the Bananos. The Republicans replaced the Democrats. Nothing of any consequence is going to change. It seems as though Americans have attention deficit disorder. Go back to 2006 midterm elections. The Democrats get swept in. They repudiate the Bush presidency and his Congress under the guise that the Democrats in office are going to end those criminal operations called wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what happens? They bring in Obama later on, and then what does he do? He increases the troop strength into Afghanistan into 70,000 more troops. It's the two-headed one-party system. The Wall Street gang is in control of the White House. This is all just show. They're going to make a big story about tax breaks for the filthy rich and whether or not they're going to gut the already gutless Obamacare and whether or not they're going to balance the budget. And in the meantime, the big story today, Matt, is how much money is the Federal Reserve going to dump into the markets. You know, that digital money not worth the paper it's not printed on. That's what everyone's really waiting for. The rest of this is just a sideshow.
Well, indeed, talk to us about this, what they call quantitative easing. Can you explain what's involved in that and what it's supposed to do?
Well, it's white shoe boy language, quantitative easing. All it is dumping more money into the financial system so the big banks could borrow at zero, continue to do their speculation and investments, with a quote, investments is really, just gambling, and charging the people high interest rates in return so they could continue to make profits. The global economy's in collapse. I don't have to tell you folks over there in Ireland, one of the pictures we have in our Trends Journal, the autumn edition, is that cement truck crashing through the gates of the Irish Parliament. They're doing this around the world. The central banks are dumping money into the economies to keep the big boys afloat. They call it austerity measures. It's people getting taxed more, getting less benefits, losing jobs so they could bail out the guys that made bad bets with bonds. It's as simple as that, and they're doing the same thing here.
What's the alternative? There's lots of people, Gerald, in this country who would like to say, burn the bondholders. Let's not repay them the money that they lent recklessly to our banks and which our state took responsibility for. Let's restructure the amount of debt that we have to repay, our national debt. But the problem is, we still need to borrow. Will we be able to borrow from somewhere else if we don't repay these guys?
Of course they will. Why should these guys not get burnt? You know what gets me, Matt? All my life I hear about free markets and capitalism until the big guys start taking losses, and then they come out with this load of baloney that, they're too big to fail. If they fail, then the world will come to an end. No. Capitalism then takes place. You know what the motto now of the Trends Research Institute is? Break the chains, buy local, and bank local. The only way the people are ever going to make it is to take the power away from the power brokers. And that's all these politicians are. What a disgusting spectacle. From that clown Cowan you got over there, to Sarkozy, to Berlusconi, to Obama, Bush, Clinton, you go down the line. You know who these people are? These are the same people you couldn't stand in high school and college that wanted to become the head of the, class president or head of the student council, and they always used to suck their way up in brown nose to everybody else so they could get what they want. Now they're telling us what to do. They don't have a clue. If you watched the election results last night in the U.S., it was a disgusting. You hear the guys saying the same things. We're gonna balance the budget, and we're gonna free up the credit lines so that small business could again start borrowing and expand. Now, one thing has nothing to do with another. It's called globalization. They've taken all the good jobs and sent them to China along with the technology, and the people have over-borrowed because of the criminal activities in the banks by loaning the money at these ridiculously low rates with no collateral, and now they want the people to bail out the banks.
What's the alternative? You tell us how we can get out of this mess, what we can do, Gerald.
Number
please.
one, you have to stop spending money you don't have. I'm old enough to remember when people didn't buy things on credit. As a matter of fact, I remember in the UK when credit cards first came out, you were a loser if you used your credit card. It meant you didn't have money. Buy only what you could afford and buy local. Build a local economy in every way. Whether it's drinking all Irish booze, buying all Irish food you can, but making Irish shoes, Irish shirts. Every country, every community has to support each other. The whole lie of globalization only helps out the multinationals, and these are the people that when they need austerity measures, that's the one they're really bailing out. And I'm not nostalgic. So what I'm saying is, let's go back to a formula that worked before. The whole World Trade Organization, NAFTA, globalization has crippled the working people. You take a nation of proud people that used to be merchants, they used to be craftspeople, artisans, manufacturers, and now mom and pop businesses, and now what they've turned them into a service sector society. Now they're clerks and cashiers, service sector, servant, serf. When they bemoan the beginning of industrialization, even in their wildest dreams, Blake would have never imagined it to have degenerated into this.
One final point, though, Gerald. When we were ourselves alone here in this country, when we had trade barriers against the rest of the world, where we thought we could be self-sufficient, it was a disaster for us. It was entering the European community, expanding our exports beyond Britain into Germany, France, the rest of Europe, into the United States. That's when we prospered. If we didn't have the foreign multinationals in this country now, we'd be completely bereft of jobs, bereft of exports, bereft of income. So would that sort of protectionism not hurt us?
Not that. I'm not talking about total protectionism. It's not a level playing field. Go back to the Cold War days when you used to hear about those communist Chinese, those red Chinese. Guess what? It hasn't changed. All the deal is, Matt, is that manufacturers have taken their business over to China. They get the product manufactured there and ship it back and mark it up. In the meantime, they sold the technology because the Chinese aren't stupid. If you're going to manufacture here, we want your technology too. That's why they have the trains that are now the fastest in the world, whether it was Siemens, Hitachi, or everybody else giving it to them. So what I'm saying is we don't need the multinationals. We don't need Kraft. We don't need General Foods. We don't need any of them. We don't need Nestle. They're cornering the market. And what we do need is more local manufacturers to be able to compete. It's not a level playing field. I'm not a protectionist. I say open up the markets, but let's call it what it is. And so for us in the States, I can say with full certitude that before NAFTA, before World Trade Organization, this country was the most egalitarian in the world, and now the gap between rich and the poor is the widest in the United States of any of the industrialized nations.
Gerald Celente, as ever, it's been great talking to you. Gerald is the Chief Executive of the Trends Research Institute.